Hi guys, welcome to the video. Hope you're doing well. This is part 2 of the Fusion 360 foam cutting series. So how to use Fusion 360 to generate some G-code for a 4-axis foam cutter. Now I urge you to watch part 1 if you haven't done already, because if you haven't watched part 1, then a lot of this won't probably make sense. So that will show you how to do the basics, install the post processor and the hot wire library. And then once you've got that and you follow the basics of how to do the basics design and go into the manufacturer section, then you'll be good to go on this part 2. So what we'll also do in this part 2 is show you how to get the dimensions as well for the fuselage. So things like, the size of the rudder, the tail plane, width of the fuselage. And I was going to make this part 2 as one big video showing you do the cutting, but thinking about how much you've got to cover, it's going to be too long. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a part 3, where part 3 we'll do the actual cutting. So we'll do the design in this video, and then in part 3 we'll do the actual cutting. Now I've also had a request from one of the comments as well of how we can use the post processor for a foam cutter with different axis letters. So it's been designed to use X, Y, U and Z. But if you're going to use some different letters, but most commonly Mach 3 uses X, Y, Z and A. So I'll show you how to change that. Now I'll put chapters in the description, so if that doesn't apply to you, you can just skip past that section. So it's quite easy to do, and it'll probably take about a minute to show you how to do that. So what we'll do, without further ado, we'll go on to making the bigger fuselage in 2 parts, and I'll show you how we go about that. So what we'll do, guys, I'll pop you over onto the computer and we'll just have a quick look at what we did in part 1. So I've got Fusion 360 open already, and then on the design, on the data panel here, this is the one we did first of all, YouTube L4. So we'll just close that down. So basically what we did, we made a single sketch. If I just take the canvas off so you can see the sketch. So that's the sketch we made, and then we tested it out in the manufacture section. I'll just turn it on its side, and then we actually went through and got the foam cutter to cut that. So, but that came out quite small, as you probably see. So what we're going to do now, we're going to show you how to do it in 2 parts, and it's a little bit more involved, but it's not too bad. It's quite easy. So what we'll do is we'll start a new design. We'll close this one off, and we'll start a new design, and then we're just going to save it first, like I said before, because once you save it, it captures the history. So I'm going to just call this YT Demo L4 Part 2. You can call it whatever you want, really, but it's just so I can find it again easily. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to bring the canvas in like we did before. So if we go up to Insert, go to Canvas, and then Insert from my computer. So this is the image that we used. So we'll bring the image in, and then it wants to know which plane we want to put it on. I always put it on the top plane, so I'll put it on the top. Now if I'm going through this a little bit fast, just watch the part 1, because we covered most of this in part 1. And then we select the face it goes on there. And we can pull it out a bit if we want, but we're going to calibrate this anyway, so it doesn't matter too much. So I'll just say OK there. I've got the camera right in the way of the screen there. There we go. So once we've done that, we calibrate the canvas. So you just right click, calibrate, and we'll just zoom in. So somewhere around about there. And then somewhere, I tend to do it down here, otherwise it tends to do it at an angle. So we just put that in there. Now you can see that says 54mm, which is way too small. So the size I've chosen for this is 780mm. So we put 780 in there. And there we go, we've now got the model scaled to the size we need. Now if you want to build a much bigger one, just do it whatever scale you want to. Right, now this is where it changes a little bit from part one. What we're going to do, we're going to use components just to separate the front and rear sections. I found this is the easiest way to do it within the manufacture section. So on the top there, make sure we've got the top selected. Now there's a few ways you can get to this. You can right click, create new component, or you can go up to assemble a new component. Doesn't matter really where you get it from. And then what I'm going to do is give this a name. So I'm going to call this front. And we just say OK. And then what we're going to do is we click on it then, this little circle here to activate it. Now what you'll find happens now, anything we do now will appear under this component. Now, if you don't quite understand this, just follow along and you'll see why we need to do this as we get further on into it. So now we've done that, we're going to create a sketch, and what will happen now is a sketch will appear under this front section here, and then if we didn't do that, it would all appear under the demo one. So it does keep it a little bit more organized. So what we'll do, we can create a sketch from there, or we can do create sketch from there. Doesn't really matter where we do it. It wants to know which face we want it on, so we just select the plane that we're on. And the first thing we need to do is decide where we're going to split the fuselage. Now I've decided I'm going to split it just behind the window section here, around about here. So what I'm going to do that is I'm going to create a construction line. So I'm going to create a line, and I'm just going to click on this line type for construction, and I'm going to put it round about. Doesn't really matter where you put it really. And I'm just going to go, just going to keep it, make sure it's at 90 degrees. That's it. And then just on the tick box there. So that's where we're actually going to split the fuselage to make it in two parts. So once we've done that, what we need to do now, let's change the line type back to normal. We need to then sketch out the fuselage. So I'll start off with a line. Do another line there. I think we'll do another one. What you might find a bit helpful as well is you turn the snapping off. Sometimes, well, we have got snapping off there. Sometimes when you're trying to follow a canvas, it can be a little bit. Now I'm going to take a few little liberties on this design just to make it easier on the foam cutter. So I'm going to bring that line to there. And then what I'm going to do then is say OK to that. I'm going to change to the spline. So I'm going to go to spline now and zoom this in a bit so I can see it easier. Probably put a point there. Another point there. Another point there. And I think that'll do for there. And then what we can do then, we can just manipulate these, if we do an escape, we can just manipulate these points then to get it looking a little bit. That's it. So just pull them around. It does take a little bit of doing just to get these just how you want them. It's not looking too bad there, and you can move these points a little bit as well if they're not quite where you want them. So that's not too bad there. Then what we're going to do then, I'm going to do another line from there, just to about there, and so OK. I'm a bit short of that. Let's just undo that. So if you make a mistake, just undo. Need that a little bit longer. going to come up to around about there, I think. Say OK to that. And what I'm going to do is do another line from there around about there. It's OK. And then what I'm going to do now to fill that gap in, which is go up to arc. If we go to tangent arc, if we select 2 points, it creates an arc that joins them points together, a nice smooth arc there. Right, so that's that one. Now I'm going to switch back to a spline, and what I'm going to do now, I'm going to start here, just come down a little bit, probably to about there. So OK. And we'll just manipulate that to get it a bit closer. That's not too bad. Now you might want to take a little bit more time doing this, but I'm just doing it sort of reasonably quickly for the video. So what I'm going to do now is create another line. I'm just going to go straight up 90 degrees there, so around about. I like to try on top of the canvas line there, and say OK to that. And what I'm going to do now is create another spline, go down to where we joined it, about there, say OK, and then oh, what's going on there? Yeah, just manipulate that until we get it as how you want. Doesn't look too bad. Right. Then what I'm going to do now, I'm going to do another line. Now you could, if you want, just go straight up, but I think what might be a better joint. So I'm going to go down to the bottom here. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to use the tab key. I'm going to go to the degree. I'm going to put that at 135. And then bring this line. See how it's wanting to, I think it's wanting to reference the midpoint of that construction line. And then what I'm going to do then is do that. Now you can see what's happened now is that the front half of the fuselage just escape out of that. And if we just turn our canvas off, you can see what we've got now. So this is going to be our front section. We're going to cut out. Then we'll do our rear section and then join them together. Almost like, is it called a scarf joint or something like that, I think, anyway. Right, so put the canvas back on. So that's how we do the front section. So what we'll do now is we'll go on to do the rear section. Right, so what we'll do now we've got the front section in, we'll do the rear. Now what we want to do first of all is go up to the top, just activate our top level again. And then what we're going to do is create a new component. So we'll do it from this, and this component's going to be rear. So we'll say rear, and it should activate anyway because it's got activate on there. So we do activate. Now what we're going to do now is create another sketch. So we'll do it like that one that time. Create sketch on this face. Now what we want to do is pick up these two lines here and these points. And the way to do that in Fusion 360 is what's called project. So if we go into create and we go to project include and we go to project, then let's just close that one out of the way. It's asking us what geometry. Now we want this first on the selection filter. This is specified entities, or this, we don't want the whole body. So on geometry, what we do is we select that line and that line, and that'll form the start of our fuselage. So we say OK to that, and you can see they're slightly different colour because they've been projected. And what we can do now, if we want, is turn off the front sketch. So if we turn off the front sketch, we see we've got them lines now. So in our sketch, let's just open up again there. So what we're going to do, first of all, I'm going to create a line. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a line here. This is our start line from where the wire goes in. And that just reminds me, I forgot to do it on the front section. So I say OK to that. So let me just go back to the front section. I'll activate that finish sketch before I forget it. Yeah, I forgot to do that. Apologies. So we go to sketch there. We edit the sketch. And what we want to do there is put a little section there. 10mm. So this is again for where our wire to start from. I explained why we needed that in part 1. Right, so we'll go back to so finish that sketch. There we go. Right, so we'll go back to rear. We'll activate rear sketch and we'll edit the sketch. There we go. Right. So it's a similar process here, but what I'm going to do on this one, I'm actually going to include the rudder section. We're looking at a few images of the L4, and I think it would be quite good to include this as well, and then we can make the build a little bit easier as well, hopefully. So we'll go through the same process. So we'll start with a line. I'm going to go up to here. About there somewhere. Bring it down. Make sure that's I don't know why it's doing 90. Let's put 90 degrees in. Ah, that's why. It's 90 degrees to that line. Right. Didn't want that. So what we want it up there is that'll do. And then we'll come across to here. And then we'll come down to around about there where that curve starts. And then we'll say OK to that. So that's got our first sections in. This one here we're going to do a spline again because there's a bit of curve on that. So we'll do a spline. We'll bring it to somewhere around about down here. And you probably could do all this with a spline, but I think this is a little bit easier doing it this way. And then we'll press escape and we'll just manipulate that. Yeah, it didn't take much. So OK to that, and then we'll create an arc, a tangent arc. And we'll create it between them 2 points. And there you go, you can see it change colour then. So if we turn the canvas off, we've now got the rear section. So now we've got them sections, what we're going to do is we're going to extrude both of them. And this is what we need for making it in 2 parts when we're going to the manufacture section. So we'll finish the sketch. and then we'll go, when I'm extruding I like to look at it, and we'll put this one on as well. So you can see we've got both sketches now. So I'm going to go onto the front section there. I'm going to extrude. It doesn't matter how far you extrude it, I'm just going to do it 5mm, but you can do it whatever you want really, it doesn't matter. And then we'll activate the front section, and we'll go into extrude there, and we'll do another 5mm. Now what you can do as well, which might make things a little bit easier, if we go on to the rear section, if we do go to appearance, we can change the colour of it just to make it a little bit easier to see. So if we go down, there's all different colours in that in Fusion, so and all you do is you just drag the colour on. So I'm changing that to yellow, so it just makes it stand out a little bit better. And the sketches, you see what it's done, it's turned our sketches off. So if we put the sketches back on, you can see, if we turn it on, look on the top now, you can see what we've got. We've got them two little start sections, and then we've got these two bodies now, which we're going to manufacture section. Because they're bodies, we can select the bodies now to make two parts. So that's the first part in the design. So what we'll do in the next section, we'll go on into the manufacture section and show you how we actually get the G code out. The design's done and we've extruded both bodies. What we can do now is drop into the manufacture section. So we go from design. So this is just like part one. Let's just turn that line there is from the sketches, so it's not going to cause any problem. We'll just turn it on its side. So what we have to do to start with, we have to create a setup just like we did in part one, but this time we're going to create a setup for each body. So we do setup, new setup, and then what we need to do, if we go down to model where it says nothing, what we're going to do then is click on, so that's selected that body now, and then what we want to do as well, we need to select the stock point. So we can alter the stock size in a minute, but we can select this. So I tend to like to go on this bottom one there. So we should get the triad there on the corner. Then we have to go into stock size, and if we add 10mm on, so that's going to be the size of our foam. And what you also want to do, if you go to the last section, just change the name there, otherwise it will come out as 101 or 1001. And I'm just going to call this front. That's what our G code would be called, so it'd be easy to find that way. So once we've done that, what we do then, we go on to cutting, 2D profile, and then we need to select our tool. Now let me just bring this across, gone onto the wrong screen here. So if we go down to local, so this is what we loaded up in part one. So we go into hot wire, and we just select that one. It calls it its laser, but as you know, it was based off the laser post processor. So now we've got that, what we do is we go into geometry now, and it's called it contour selection. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to select that little line there, and usually you need to switch that arrow around. So you just click on the arrow, so it points the other way. And then what we need to do then is actually select on the body. Now what will happen if you select, what I found sometimes, if you select the sketch line, it does it all individually. So you're just better selecting on the actual body. And that's going that way as well, so that should be okay. If you find it goes to the bottom, just double click on the arrow, so that should be okay. So there's nothing on the heights tabs. Passes, make sure that says in computer. If it says in control, you'll get an error. And then on the last one, keep nozzle down, and then we want these lead ins and lead outs off, and then we want the entry position. So the entry position is going to be this little line we created. So we go to the point there, and you see it's got that now. So we say OK. So what we can do now, we can now simulate that. And we've got to, if there's any problems there, you'll get a warning there. So what we can do now, if we go onto the setup and go to simulate, let's just move this out of the way. I've got mine moved out of the way because of the camera. So if we just select process, so hopefully we're going to see it starts on the top, comes all the way around, does our joint there and there. So that looks okay. So if that's okay, what we can do then, once we've done that, we can actually get it to process. So we do post-process. Now, if you followed in part 1, you should have the Hotwire post-processor loaded. And the only thing to do is to make sure allow helical moves is set to no, otherwise that causes some errors. So all we do now is we do post. I'll just call it, you can see I've done this a few times before. So if we do save, want to place it, yes. And what it will do, it'll open up whatever your editor is, your text editor. Now I'm using Visual Studio Code, as you can see there. Let me just go back to the top. And this is the code it's generated. So you can see we've got the 4 axes in there. We've got the feed rate, and then right at the end, go right to the end. And then what it does then, it pulls the X and U back out to 0. So where it doesn't show it on the simulation, it will work on the actual program. So that's the front section done. So what we need to do now is create another setup for the rear section. So we do the same thing again. Now what might be helpful with this is if you turn the front section off. I found that sometimes it gets confused as to which one. So what I'm going to do, under here models, if you just expand that, all I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the front off. And then what we're going to do now is create a new setup. So new setup. Now it's automatically picked this body, but if it hasn't, because we've switched the other body off, it's selected it. But if we had the other body on, see it's selected the whole thing there. So what we want to do is just select that there. So it's gone front, so we don't want front. So we want this rear body. So that's why I switch it off. It just makes things a little bit easier on the, so just turn front off. And then we're going to change that to rear. Just bring it over here a bit so we can see it a bit better. And these are just some of our sketch lines. And then what we're going to do then is we're then going to create our profile. So it's basically the same as the front section. So we've still got our tool selected. Go to geometry. So the first thing we want to do, we want to select that line. And then what we want to do then is select the contour there. Now if you select the sketch, sometimes what I found is it breaks it up and you have to go around selecting each little part, and then the tool path gets all messed up. So best to select on the top there, And you see we've got one complete selection. Passes, that's okay. Keep nozzle down, lead in, lead out, and the entry point we want is there. So we say okay to that. Now if we simulate that, if we go onto the setup and simulate the whole thing, so that looks to have done okay. So what we'll do now, what we want to make sure is the code starts at 0, 0. If you try and do it don't do it this way with bodies, it thinks it tries to start this job way down the foam cutter. So let's post-process, and then that's all the same, that's okay. So we'll just post. I'll call this rear, see I've done rear before. Save, yes. And then it's brought up so as you can see there, it's starting at 0, 0 there. If we go all down to the bottom and just check. Yeah, and it's come back out. So that looks okay. So that's how we've got our front and rear sections out. And what we can do as a further check, so what we can do as a final check is bring up Dev CNC foam. Let's just go onto my other screen, so we'll bring it across. And take them off. So we'll open the front. That looks okay. It might look like it's the foam's not the right size, but you can go in and set that afterwards. You can set the foam sizes there, and I'll show you how we get the sizes out in a little bit. But this is just to make sure the G code's okay. So we set it running, and it's starting from 0, 0. And then the wire should just come back out there, so that looks okay. So we'll check the rear. Something not right there. This is what we need to check it. What's happened there? Minus. Let's go back and have a look at our edit. That's why. That's why it's worth checking this, guys. This box point is in the wrong position. That's why I've got them minus numbers. So what we're going to do is turn the box point down to there. So that's why it's a good idea to check this. And on the setup, I don't think we added. What we need to do as well, I forgot to add the offset. Now, if we just turn it on its, look at the front there, as you can see, this start line is out of what would be our foam. So what we need to do is make sure that's included. So I think I'm going to do 15mm there. Yeah, that's got it. And then we'll round it up to the nearest 5. That's looking better. Right, so what we'll do now, we're now going to post-process that. Oh, it wants to regenerate them. So what we have to do is then generate. There we go. Now we can post-process. So everything's the same there, rear, save. Let's have a look at a G code. Go right down to the bottom. It should be back at 0, isn't it? Yeah, that's looking better. Right, so now if we bring up DevSim, get through to the right screen, rear. Yeah, that's better. So that's why you need to check these things, guys. And, yeah, even I make mistakes. Well, I make lots of mistakes. I can usually fix them though. So what we'll do is we'll run that. Speed up a bit. And there, that's looking a lot better. So we could safely put that into the foam cutter. So one other thing you can do, which is quite useful, say you want to know what sizes of foam and everything. If you go on to the setup, we'll do it on this one we've just done. Go on to setup there. Where is it? Right, click on setup. That's what we want, a setup sheet. So if we go to setup sheet, it's going to ask us where we want to put this. So I don't want it to go there. So I'm going to put it into USB version G code L4. And if I just move this, it's gone onto my other screen, so I've moved it across. So what it does there, it gives you all the sizes. So this is telling our stock size. So all we really need is the X and Y. We don't need to worry about the Z because we're not using that. And it gives you some other useful information there as well. So what you can do that for each one and get your sizes out. So what I need to do is go and cut a piece of foam that's that in X and Y. And then what I'll do next is we'll jump onto the section where you show you how to get the rest of the dimensions out, to show you what size foam we need. So that's how we basically create two parts in Fusion 360. And the idea being is once we've got the parts out, we can then join them together there, and hopefully that should be a reasonably strong joint. So if we go back to the design and put the canvas back on. So that's how we get our side profile. So what we'll do in the next section, I'll show you how to get the dimensions out and how we can get the dimensions of the fuselage width. Then what I'm going to do on the foam cutter, when we do into the cutting, I'm going to actually use the foam cutter, not with any G code, just by lining it up and using the slicing routine that's in the foam cutter. And what we're going to do, we're going to put it this way up, and then we're going to slice it there, and then slice it down there. So it'll start to give us our shape. So, but that'll be in part 3. But I'll show you how we get the dimensions for that in the next section, and also how we can get the rudder, and tail plane out, and export them out to PDF so we can use them to create our rudder and tail plane. So on to the next section then on getting the dimensions. Right guys, it's a few days later since we finished the manufacture section. So what we want to do now is work out how to get the dimensions. So we've got the side profile of the fuselage, but what we want to do now is work out how wide we want it. So what we're going to be doing is looking at the bottom section of the drawing there and doing some construction lines and some lines to work out how wide. The old computers, you might be able to hear it in the background there. It's struggling a little bit because I've got OBS open and Fusion 360, so it's getting on a little bit, but I'll try and get some of it out if I can. So now we've got this side profile, we want to work out how wide a piece of foam we're going to need for this. So we're going to need a piece of foam that's going to be from the side here to the side there. So the way to do that, and the best way I found to do this, is just create another sketch. So we've got front and rear. So I'm not going to do a component for this because we're not going to be actually machining this with the foam cutter. We're just using it to get to dimensions. So I'm just going to do it in the main component, which is the top level here. So what I'm going to do is going to create a sketch. The first thing I like to do on this is put a centre line down. So I didn't do that, did it? Right, let's create a sketch. There we are. He wants to know, because of the colour there, they blend a bit. So what we want to do is create it on this top face. There we go. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put on line type of construction and select line. And then what I'm going to do is just zoom in, and I'm just using the scroll wheel on the mouse for that. So I'm going to go to there and then bring it straight down the bottom, and it will keep, you can see that little symbol there further on the line. So we'll just, and the length of it doesn't matter, so we'll just say OK for that. Now, the reason I'm going to do that is because what we're going to do when we create this line, we're going to mirror it to the other side. So we'll take the construction off, and then what we want to do with this is just do it with straight lines, because that's how the foam cutter is going to cut it. So what we're going to do is just take a line again, and I'm going to take a little bit of a liberty on the design. Yeah, from about there, that'll do. And then what I'm going to do, I'm just going to do a line from there to about there. And then another line from there to somewhere about there, where it starts to probably starts to go in a bit earlier, doesn't it? So probably about there, and then down to the you can see, because it's not exactly straight, because it's curved, we're having to try and do our best with a curved line. The reason we're doing for this is because the foam cutter can only cut straight lines, it can't do curves, and the way we're going to do this, so I think that will do there. Yeah, I think that'll do. So what we'll do then, we're going to mirror this line to the other side. So if we do create mirror, it's going to ask us to select the object, so I'm going to select that line, that line, that line, and the mirror line to select, and that's why we put this construction line in here. And now we've got, so if I just turn the canvas off, you can see now we've got the side, we've got the top view now. Put the canvas back on. I think what I'm going to do, I can turn all these little symbols here are called the constraints. I'm just going to turn them off just to make it a little bit easier to see. There we go. So now we've got that. What we want to do is to work out the dimensions, or get Fusion to work out the dimensions for us. So, and we don't actually need the canvas on for this. So we'll turn the canvas off. And on Fusion we have a dimension tool. So what we want to do is know, basically we want to know how wide the foam is going to be. So if we go from there to there, we can pull that out to there, or just depends wherever you want it, we'll leave it there. So that's saying the foam needs to be 83mm wide, but the foam I've got is 50mm. So what I'm going to do is going to be putting two together, and then once we've got them stacked together, we'll then use the foam cutter to create these shapes, or we'll mark the shapes on them. You'll see that in part 3, but it might be a little bit clearer. So what we need to do first of all is get the dimensions. So we've got that one, we just accept that. We'll do the front, accept that, and then we'll do the back as well. We'll pull that down there out of the way. And that's saying 10 there. And then what we need to do, we need to know the distance of these sections. So we'll do that one on 62. Then we'll do that one on 31. And then we'll do this one. So that's saying 410. So I think basically what I'll be doing it 130, 162 and 410, and that would give us the shape. And we can always do some sanding afterwards to get it looking right. So that's how we get the dimensions there. So in part 3 you'll see how we use them dimensions to actually cut the shape. On the foam cutter there's an actual routine on there, a macro called slice, and that's what we'll be using. I'll put a little picture of it up showing you that on the software. And basically all that does, it just runs the foam cutter straight down, and that's what we'll be using to do these sections. So once we've cut this out, we'll then turn it on its side and then cut these sections out. So that's got our dimensions. Now the other thing we're going to want to complete the model, so probably what we're going to want as well is the wingspan. So this is a straight wing, so this one's fairly easy. So what we'll do some dimensions again, and we'll do from there to there. That's okay. When it puts the brackets round, it just means it hasn't actually dimensioned it, because what will happen when you do a dimension and it asks you when it puts the figure up, if you type in another figure, it will actually scale the object to that dimension. But this has already been fixed in position, so it can't. So this is what's called a derived dimension. So when we create the wing, what we'll need an aerofoil section on the root of 192. Right, so now we've got the dimensions of the fuselage. What we want to do to complete the model as well, we want to get the rudder and the tailplane out. So now you've got a couple of options here depending what sort of equipment you've got. The first option I'm going to show you is how we can just get a PDF, a one-to-one size of the rudder out, and then we can put that onto a piece of foam or balsa or whatever, and then create the shape from that. Well, the other option is, depending if you've got a router or a 3D printer, if you wanted to do the tailplane 3D printed, you could do that with Fusion. And we can create a DXF or we can create an STL file. So what we'll do first of all, I think what I'm going to do for this is create a new component as well. So we'll go to component. We're still in Sketch here, aren't we? Let's come out of Sketch from the last section. Right, so what we're going to do is assemble new component. I'm going to call this one Rudder. And then it should be activated, but I just like to double check. So now we've got the rudder component. What we want to do is trace around this. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new sketch. And it's asking us which plane. You can just see that there. So we've got on the top. I always do everything off the top plane. It tends to make things a bit easier, especially when we go into the drawing section. Right, so we'll just move this across. And then what I'm going to do, first of all, just create some straight lines. I'm just basically going to trace around the rudder. I think that'll do. So what we've got now, we've now got the rudder, and by going over it, you can see that the whole thing's highlighted. So that means it's a closed sketch. If it doesn't do that, it means you haven't got it joined somewhere. Right. So that'll do for the rudder. So if we finish the sketch, now there's another option you can do here if you want to. What you can do, if you want to get this out as a DXF, with Fusion 360, the hobbyist or home use version, there are some restrictions, and some of the restrictions are related around the exports. So if we go on to sketch, what we can do save as DXF. So if you've got something like a CNC router or a laser cutter or something, you could save this as a DXF and use your software for that. But again, if you've got that, you could even use Fusion to create that as well. But the option I'm going to show you is how we just create a PDF. So now we've got the outline of our rudder. What we're going to do is extrude that. And just a little bit, like we did before. It doesn't really matter for the drawing, so we'll call it 5mm. There we go. So we've now got our rudder there. So what we do now, we now go to the drawing environment. So we go to drawing, from design, full assembly, and what I'm going to do is do select. I'm just going to select the rudder. And then here you can change your paper size. Now I've got an A4 printer, so I'm going to select A4, but there's all different sizes you can select there. And just leave the rest as it is. And we do OK. And you can see the rudder's there, but it's in the wrong orientation. So what we do, we change that to top. And we want a scale of 1:1. So as you can see, as we drag over, we can then place it on the drawing there. And we just say OK. So what we can do is print it out now. Now the problem is, if you try and do export, all this here is for the paid version of Fusion. So you think, well, how do I get a PDF out? Well, the easiest way to do it, if we go to print, and then on your whether you're using a Mac or a Windows machine, just print it to PDF. So if you do Microsoft PDF to print, and then print, and it'll ask you where you want it. I think we can, and we'll give it a name. Just call it Rudder. So that there's our, and what you can do now, you can save that drawing if you want. I'm not going to save it because I've already done this anyway, so I'm just going to don't save. Now what we want to do now is do the tail plane. So we'll do the same sort of process again. Assemble. Let's just select the top level first, otherwise it'll appear under the rudder. So select the top level, assemble, new component. And we're later. Right, so components activated. So what we're going to do now is do the same thing more or less. So we're going to create a sketch, going to create it on the top face, and then what I'm going to do this time as well, I'm going to project this line through here. So I'm not sure that we can pick it up. We might be able to pick it up, but just to be on the safe side, I'm going to project it through. We're going to do project, include, project, and then we just do select. There we go. So that means that line's projected through to our sketch now. And then what we're going to do a straight line somewhere around about there. To the top. That'll do. And then let's say OK to that. And then we'll go to a spline again. So what we're going to do now to pick up the dimensions of this elevator, the front section, and create an offset. So if we go to the offset tool there, now if you have a look there, it's highlighting the whole thing, and we don't want that. So if we just uncheck change selection and then just select there, it's then going to just offset that part. So we just move it across a bit so it lines up. Let's have a look, zoom in a little bit, probably a bit much. Yeah, probably about 1.5 millimeters there. Let's just type 1.5 in there, 1.5. There we go. That will do there. So if we have a look now, that's offset from there. So we can now go and use our spline again. Create spline on there. And there we go, we've got our two sections there. Now, we've only got half of it there. So what we're going to do, and what I'm going to do is going to turn the canvas off now. What we're going to do is we're going to mirror these sections here. So we create a mirror, and all we need to do is select the lines that we want to mirror. So we go down, that one, that one, that one. So we've got 6 selected. So ask us for the mirror line. So we select the mirror line again, the one that we projected. There we go. And if we say OK, and what we'll do, we'll just turn off the constraints as well. That's all these lines around here. So what we'll do now is you probably might want some dimensions. So if we go to the somewhere down there and then just pull that out. So that's telling us our rudder's roughly about 350. So that gives you some idea of. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to create the rudder and elevator out of balsa. Because one of the things I found on the flight test Bushwhacker was the rudder and the elevator did take quite a hammering, and most of it was through hanger rash, knocking it about, getting in and out of the car, off to the flying field. So guys, one of the requests I got from the part 1 of the video was how we could use the post processor with a different software like Mach 3 or Linux CNC. Now Mach 3 uses X, Y, Z and A, and Linux CNC uses X, Y, U and V, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I used Linux CNC. So what we have to do, now the easiest way to do this is to alter it before you load the post processor into Fusion 360. So what we'll do, we'll just minimize Fusion for a minute and we'll get that out of the way. So if we go on to the, so once you've downloaded it from the website, now what you can do, now you can see there, I've got actually one I've done already. But basically, once you've downloaded it, you'll end up with this top one. Just go onto it, and what you need to do is edit it. Now, you can use whatever editor you like, but make sure you use the text editor. Don't use Microsoft Word or anything like that, because it will mess it up, because this is a JavaScript file. So I'm going to show you with Notepad++. So what we do is we go into Notepad++, and then, if I remember correctly, it's around about line 72. Put it on the screen so you can see it. Yeah. So this is the whole file. This looks very complicated, and guys, I haven't written all this. I've just modified parts of it to work with a foam cutter. But basically, all we have to do, if we go down to lines 70 to 74, this is where it actually outputs the access letters. So all you need to do, where it says prefix, all we have to do is change the letter in here. Now, for Mac 3, all we need to do is change that U to an A, and that will work for Mac 3. For Linux CNC, what we would do, we would change that to a U and a V. And once you've done that, even though it says U output, Z output, that doesn't actually matter. These are just variables really in the system. So once you've done that, you could then, so even though it says X, Y, U, Z format, that doesn't matter either. So this is what it's actually going to output. So if I show you, so if we come out of that one, we go into the, so you can see on this one here, I've changed it to A, and then once you've done that, then if you follow part 1 and load the post processor up, you can then go in and change it. Now you can change it for within Fusion, and if you have a look here, this is the G code which I did for Mac 3. So you can see the access letters are now X, Y, A and Z. So on Mac 3 with 4 axis, the A is the 4th axis, and then we've got the Z there, which is the vertical axis. So guys, that brings us to the end of part 2, where we've gone through and we've made a design for a bigger fuselage, and got all the dimensions out and the drawings for our rudder and elevator. So in part 3, what we'll do, we'll make all these parts and then show you how they're made, and then actually assembling it. I'm probably going to leave that to a little bit later, because I have got some other projects on the go at the moment. But so I'll just put all the parts to one side, ready to assemble them a little bit later, in the year, because I've got something else ready to assemble as well that's waiting. So thanks very much for watching. Hope it's been useful to you. Any questions, just comment or drop me a line, and I'll catch you in the next video.